Eclipse season begins with a new moon total solar eclipse at 20 degrees and 1 minute of Leo, which is the first in this eclipse cycle since the nodes have changed. Very close together, both of them. Both of them are in August of 2026, and it will be followed in a couple of weeks by a partial lunar eclipse on the 28th of August at 4 degrees and 51 minutes of Pisces, and will be the last Pisces eclipse of that nodal axis before the final Virgo eclipse next February. So there's a finishing up energy from the past in the Virgo Pisces areas of our chart to recognize that at this time will now become really embedded, the beginning of this eclipse cycle. And this eclipse is as rare and rather remarkable to look at geometrically as its impact will be astrologically. The basket or cradle formation between Pluto in Aquarius, Neptune in Aries, and Uranus in Gemini is now completed at this eclipse time by the lid being formed by a Mercury just about to have its cazimi moment or conjunction with Jupiter in Leo. And as you can see in the diagram here, there's a mystic rectangle formed by the Venus trine to Pluto. So it looks really interesting. And I did not have the time to look up the mystic rectangle. I know that's a modern astrology thing. If you my modern astrology friends out there, can you please leave a comment about what you think the mystic rectangle might mean? I'm very curious. And as I mentioned in my last video, this Mercury that's about to have its cazimi moment with Jupiter has been under a really preparatory process with an exact opposition to Pluto and a trine to Neptune the day before the eclipse. And as Mercury perfects the sextile to Uranus, the way we conceptualize, understand, and express ourselves, our inner psychology, and how we understand that of solar figures, that's the sun in Leo. This is an extra solar eclipse because it's in the sign of the sun, ruled by the sun, in the sun. That relationship we have to our own solar identities and our understanding of those figures in the world is very likely to change under the symbolism that the sky is associated with at this eclipse. So extremely rare, again, never seen before moment because of that basket and that lid of Mercury opposing Pluto at the time of the eclipse. So we also have a Venus-Neptune opposition by the 12th, and Venus is in a trine to Pluto on the day of the eclipse. Solar eclipses occur only at new moons, and they signify new doors opening and a shift, sometimes a sudden and radical shift in our ideals, our motivations, and what's really important to us, truly the direction of our lives. That's what the sun symbolizes in the chart, and an eclipse to the sun creates a marked shift in that intention and direction. So there'll be a shift in our ideals, our motivations, what's important to us, and really the direction of our lives. What this means for us individually and as a collective is the subject of this video. I'll be offering you my 3 M's practice at the end, a meditation, a mirror work, and a mantra for this total solar eclipse at 20 degrees of Leo. Please see my free resources linked below. Those are all self-healing guides, as well as links to book with me for the rest of August. So at the time of a solar eclipse, it's as if you had a soul mission that you feel like you've completed. The energy just isn't there anymore the same. Something that was once really important to us. That could be our kids growing older, and of course our kids are still always important, but the devotion of most of our life energy to raising them is perhaps no longer required. Or maybe we've had a long career where we were really invested in a company or discipline or an art. Or maybe there's an area of social activism that was extremely important to you. You've probably already known before this eclipse cycle where the energy might be draining in some of those ambitions in your life. And when the nodes change signs, we can see where in our exact natal charts, there's an energy really decreasing itself and an energy of increase. But at eclipse time, especially where all these interactions with Jupiter, Pluto, and the remaining outer planets, Saturn's kind of the only one doing its own thing at 14 degrees and 30 minutes of Aries at this time. Given all that, we're likely all to either to have a personal experience or observe a lot of shift in direction and a change of mind, Mercury, Jupiter, a change of identity, and a shift in our desires to express ourselves authentically with an open heart. That's the opportunity that we have with Mercury in combustion with Jupiter, joining the sun at the cazimi moment and the moon at the time of this total solar eclipse. And again, because the basket formation is so unusual in these signs and areas of our chart, it's really hard to know exactly how it's going to unfold and what that will look like in the next 6 months to a year. I usually give eclipses, especially if they're hitting something by conjunction, square, or opposition in your chart, a good 6 to 12 or even more months to unfold. That has definitely been true in my life. I've seen eclipses reverberate for 2 and 3 years in the lives of my clients. We're likely to see the downfall or a certain abrupt change around leadership. That could mean death. That could just mean a shift in how we see the people that we've trusted, that we've looked up to, that we've depended, perhaps the people that, we've idolized. Celebrity culture is very much an eclipse in Leo and change happening there. The people, places, institutions that have held institutionalized power over us, Pluto and Aquarius, those are in the spotlight, and it's just going to continue to get shaken up and stirred. I think there's a sense of mental restlessness and rebellion and spiritual guidance by virtue of all these aspects that's going to get really highlighted here because of that Mercury-Jupiter conjunction opposing Pluto in particular. It's a really exciting opportunity to see where we might feel a sense of intense, powerful support by groups and associations as well. Those can be our circles of friends. That could be powerful people that come into our life that want to support our ideas, to expand Jupiter and to be shared, maybe even on, a public platform like YouTube. The Sun, Jupiter, Mercury, Moon, and Leo, not afraid to voice one's opinion in a public space, even though there are definitely risks associated with that. And the Pluto opposition will invite people to critique you, your ideas, your presence, how you represent things. There's likely to be a lot of criticism experience for those of us that take the risk to share ourselves authentically. But that risk is really worth it to me, especially because of that Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, bisextiles and trines, and being joined to finish the basket again. So that basket's getting highlighted again with Mercury and Jupiter opposing Pluto, which generally, although in the moment of the eclipse, that Mercury is combust, so that Mercury might have a hard time expressing itself. And there might be a higher likelihood at this very moment to risk being misunderstood. But remember, we're not talking about just the date of the eclipse. We're talking about the slow progression and revelation of what follows it, and sometimes things that happen before. So what we're recognizing in ourselves, what we're conceptualizing, might literally be cooking and stewing and getting clarity in the week and weeks after the eclipse, and especially after that Cazimi moment, where our own ability to lead ourselves and others, but from a place of genuine open-heartedness and connection reveals itself. Leo can get lost in the glamour of it all and attention-seeking at times. However, the Leo archetype is extraordinarily interested in loyalty, generosity, and true heart-centered connection. And a Pluto opposition to that Mercury combust means it's getting so close to the sun that it's burnt up. That's the way the ancient astrologers looked at it. And as I said in my last video on Mercury into Leo, it could actually help us burn up and burn out certain mental constructs so that the oppositional energy from Pluto feels less like wanting to take power over people or being disempowered, and more the creation of a powerful presence that is heart-centered. Remember that Jupiter-Mercury Cazimi at the time of the eclipse is receiving a sextile from Uranus, which wants to liberate our minds from some of the downsides of having an ego. And it's receiving a trine, the most supportive aspect that we have that encourages a flow state to access that deep internal spiritual guidance. It's a wonderful time for meditation, the whole month of August, to connect to a sense of fairness and justice and our desire that all people receive that in the world. And the ability to hold an internal vision and uphold external behaviors in our communications that are truly Neptunian, which can be divine love and a channeling of source energy. It is not just fear, illusion, delusion, and confusion, as my first modern astrology teacher told me 15 years ago. That's definitely possible. Anyone that's been under a Neptune transit, which I have, knows that that's no joke. All those things can happen. That's part of Neptune. But in the trine, it's a chance for something new that we might not have seen or that we can't really imagine collectively to emerge. And we might feel really personally reinvigorated following this eclipse and into the next 18 months of this Aquarius eclipse cycle, we might have a sense of literally having different eyes, different ears, and a different voice after this eclipse, one that brings compassion and a feeling of safety towards the other Aquarius, the big group, including the group I need to be identified with, that group that could hurt me. You know, the limbic brain is extremely vulnerable to the unfamiliar when it comes to group belonging and identity and social cohesion. As we've been getting closer now in the months and really years to this basket formation, that's the archetype I see unfolding with those particular outer planets of Pluto, Neptune, and Uranus, which to me is potentially symbolic of unity consciousness. I know that phrase gets tossed around, a lot and lightly, but in the state of meditation, in a state where you are helping others, if you've ever volunteered in a group or been part of a rescue operation or an intervention during a crisis or disaster relief, or even an individual physical, medical, or mental health crisis, if you've taken part in helping and assisting, you know the sort of dissolution of barriers between people that occurs in such moments. And I am very hopeful and optimistic that in this eclipse cycle, although that could involve difficulty and crisis in terms of what brings people together, I'm really hoping that's not the case. Unfortunately, it could be. Remember that old Smith song, if it's not love, then it's the bomb that will bring us together? Let's hope that that's not the case. But we've all experienced a bomb in our individual lives at some point. Whether we've had a diagnosis, had a friend with a loss, we've had a child that received a diagnosis. We know how it feels when a bomb goes off in our individual lives, in our families, and in our communities. And when that happens, we know what needs to be done and what is right and how to respond. Deep down, I absolutely believe that humans want and know how to do and what to do that is right, what is true, what is generous. Leo, I will always believe that the human spirit is generous at heart, but the physical mammalian brain is not. So the spirit of the human might be generous at heart. Our lizard brains are very concerned with the immediate needs of me, mine, my family, my kingdom, my group. And the tension there is very active when we have eclipses and Aquarius co-present with Jupiter for the next year during almost the entire eclipse cycle in Leo, across from Pluto for 17 more years in Aquarius. So that's what we're invited to consider. Every belief, every exchange, how we use our money. Mercury is the mercantile. Where we shop, what we invest in, all of that at this time is reflecting, is it good for me or is it good for all? And that the answer to that is very unique for every person. I don't pretend to know what it is. I'm not any wiser than anyone else about answering that question, although certainly lots of people think that they know it. And it's going to be something that we're called to revisit and answer every day in a new way at this time. So the meditation and reflection for this total new moon solar eclipse in Leo is, what practices provide my mind with inner guidance? And who could I lean on, turn to, read at this time to stay connected to my humanity, and the good for all? Your mirror work for the transit is straight spine, deep breath, look into your left eye. There is powerful guidance within you, and it's safe to trust it. And your mantra for the transit is, I'm willing to take the risk to shine brightly. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for everyone who's been subscribing recently, for liking, for sharing. I love reading your comments. I truly appreciate them. Please take advantage of all I think there's 5 now free resources on my website. Links to book with me are below. If you like this video, you'll enjoy these above, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.